Question marks intensify on Melbourne after a shock result against Hawthorn. St Kilda blows a perfect chance to move into the 8. And Dusty season done. What does it mean for the Tigers? All that and more to come from the round so far, brought to you by AAMI. But Kane Corns, how about tonight at the G? The team split the points. Melbourne, though, still moved to top.
Yeah, this was one of the most shocking results we've had all year. I watched Melbourne play live last week against Port Adelaide, and I walked away thinking, wow, this team is probably one of 3 teams that could easily win the premiership. And then you watch them tonight, and they're just vulnerable against the bottom sides. They've lost to Adelaide, Collingwood, GWS, and now they've drawn to Hawthorn. So it was a stunning one. We'll pay tribute to Hawthorn on what they did in just a moment, but what a performance. Unfortunately, draws don't satisfy anyone.
No, they don't. When you see Melbourne leading by 27 points late in the second quarter, it's almost write your own ticket as to how much they will win by. But this happened in the last quarter. Mitch Lewis, early in the final term, putting the Hawks up for the first time in the game.
I just thought the pressure around the footy was terrific. So plus 23 in tackles, Hawthorn. And it doesn't matter how good you are, if a side comes with that intensity and that pressure around the footy, and they're willing to do it for most of the night. We're seeing some brilliance here from Melbourne. Clearly there was a class differential. Hawthorn had some real struggles going inside 50 and lacked a bit of polish. This is just brilliance, absolutely brilliance from Dylan Moore. The hands there to Luke Bruce too. It doesn't get enough credit now for what he's still doing in a poor side who are 17th and still kicking goals. He kicked 3, but just thought Hawthorn's pressure. Sean Burgoyne in game number 402 at 38 years of age laid 10 tackles tonight, plus 23, as I said. So phenomenal physical performance from the Hawks to really pressure the life out of Melbourne.
Hawthorn's defence missing heaps of key players. Sicily out, Will Day, Impey, Scrimshaw, the list goes on. They've held Melbourne to 79 points. And in the midfield, Tom Mitchell, 39 disposals. Pressure acts, 40. That was a game high. Metres gained went up. You put the questions on him last week to improve and increase his effectiveness on the game. Did you get that tonight?
Yeah, I thought he was much better tonight. So he's a better player when he's kicking the ball. So he's had 22 kicks tonight, 17 handballs, high metres gained, most on the ground. I'd still love to see him get his possessions in more dangerous positions. So he had only 4 score involvements from 39. He's had 5 score involvements from 78 disposals in the last 2 weeks. Now, Nat Fyfe had 12 on his own last week. So he needs to improve on that. But he was able to go forward and kick a goal. Missed one again in the last quarter that perhaps he should have kicked on the right foot. But he was a much more damaging player tonight than what I think he's been for the last month.
On paper, you probably think Hawthorn going tall. They had Reeves and McAvoy as a recognised ruckman, 3 key tall forwards, but it worked at times because they were able to identify Stephen May. Season low 3 marks for him, only 3 intercept possessions. They were able to cause spillages like this.
Well, everyone's going to come after Melbourne in this area because they've done it so well and they've had time to have a look at what's worked and what hasn't. I reckon if there's one vulnerability for Melbourne, it's when the ball does get on the ground in their back line, as we're seeing here. So they're so good in the air and that's been their strength clearly. But Lever and May, they're not that agile on the ground, are they? Petty as well. They're not that versatile and their agility can be left wanting at times. So you just, under all circumstances, as best as you possibly can, bring the ball to ground, and Melbourne looked vulnerable in their defensive 50 tonight when the ball hit the deck.
Only 10 players tonight, at least 10 players tonight with 35 games or less. It's a great coaching performance from the Hawks. What does it mean for the Clarko-Sam Mitchell takeover?
Well, it endorses Clarko again, doesn't it? I mean, we probably shouldn't fall into the trick of sort of lauding Alistair Clarkson every time they have a really strong performance and not addressing it when they've been poor, but it does. It does just that. If you line up Melbourne and Hawthorn on paper, talent for talent, pound for pound tonight, they should have had no hope. And it looked as though they weren't going to have any hope, as you saw there. And you mentioned the time in front and the lead that Melbourne got out to, but they just hung in there. Clearly, he's a great motivator. Clearly, he's still got it. And clearly, someone's going to come with a big checkbook, albeit he's been adamant that he's not going anywhere. And right now, you have to believe him. All
right, let's see where that falls. To Marvel Stadium today, the Power, they're back into the top 4. St Kilda blew a perfect chance, as we mentioned, off the top. And take us through this because the Saints had their chances late.
Yeah, they did. St Kilda missed so many opportunities, particularly in front of the set shots. But that's amazing. Port Adelaide probably had 8 players that have played SANFL this year and aren't in their best 22 because of injuries, which we'll get to. Rowan Marshall missed 2 absolute sitters in front of goal. St Kilda kicked 0 goals, 6 from set shots. that man there, Ollie Wines, was just enormous. And there were some big moments. Like you saw that mark there to Wines, that one there to Marshall. And then you're going to see some brilliant finishing here from Charlie Dixon, who was well beaten by Ugle-Hagan tonight. Howard was terrific. This was Dixon's only real moment in the game. That put the icing on the cake and finished it off for Port Adelaide. Terrific win. Their best of the year. You can see Ken Hinkley, who we were critical of last week for some coaching moves, flipped it this week because he had no small forwards. He put Carl Amon forward. He put Darcy Byrne-Jones forward. He shuffled the decks, thought his selection was better. That was a terrific win for Port Adelaide, considering the players they're missing.
More on them in just a sec. How about the Saints, though? Because they had the chance to move into the top 8. They've blown it, and some of these turnovers, especially late, were really, really costly. They've blown their chance, and they've gone 3 straight, missed the chance to go 4.
Gee, they were scrappy, weren't they? I mean, that kick there from Brad Hill, and again, it just can't happen. I mean, he's been much better in the last month, but you can't afford mistakes like this, particularly in your back half. Like, that's just almost giving goals away. Look at that lazy kick sink there. 1-step kick turnover, bang, in your back half. And this one from Butler. So no pressure. He's got an eternity to make a decision. He tries to kick it on the outside of his boot, running at full pace with a player coming across his leg. Never going to work. He played like a millionaire tonight, Butler, and he's got to be better than what he was. And St Kilda must be better going forward. What an opportunity missed for them. As I said, 0 goals, 6 from set shots. It's been the story of their last 2 years, 3 years.
Last week it was Melbourne who really put Port Adelaide under significant pressure. The Power responded today as you'd hope they would.
Yeah, they're a good team at responding. So when they have a disappointing performance, Port Adelaide often respond really well, and they responded physically. I mean, the tackle count was massive, and you saw St Kilda forced in a turnover. Brad Crouch, I should say, had 36 disposals, but just at 58%, which was the 3rd worst on the ground. So they were able to let him get the footy but not hurt you. But just time and time again, I mean, we could have shown 100 clips of this. Port Adelaide were just too strong around the footy. Tackles 75 to 57. You see crunching ones like that from Sam Powell-Pepper. And I thought they were up for the fight. And that was probably the difference between the two sides. One side clearly wanted it more, and you can tell that, and you can tell by the tackle count. And St Kilda didn't. These are the players missing from Port Adelaide. Basically, all of their small forwards gone. Butters, Fantasia, Farrell, Gray, Motlop, Rosie. That's a whole forward line and some pretty good players. So that's why I reckon it's Port Adelaide's best win of the year and sets them up really nicely for a good run, which we'll get to in a second.
They should get Dersma and Hartlett back next week after they played Sandful earlier today. Now, we've been asking all year who's going to stand up alongside Charlie Dixon. You've identified our Saturday star, a young second-year forward.
Well, we need to start talking about him more. He's 19 years of age. He's kicked 4 goals in a big game. He is the second leading goal scorer in a top 4 side. He's taken 28 marks inside 50, and he's 19 years of age. So right now, he's the rising star. I mean, we're far too midfield heavy in all of our awards. So you look at the coaches awards right now, the top 10, there's one non-midfielder in there, and that's Max Scorn, who's a ruckman. Look at the last 10 Brownlow medal winners. Look at the rising star winners of recent years. There's the odd exception. We don't give enough weight to the role that other positions play, be that defenders, running half-backs, or the toughest position to play on the ground, and that's Mitch Georgiades. So if anyone deserves a rising star right now, he probably goes on and kicks 35, 40 goals for the year. That's a massive effort in a really good side.
You probably throw Luke Jackson at Melbourne into that conversation as well. Back to last night, Kane. Richmond, they breathed some life into this season. 7 premiership players were missing. Camden McIntosh got injured early, but this is the big one. Dustin Martin out for the season, ruled out today, remains in hospital tonight with this kidney injury. It is a major blow to their season's hopes.
Oh, it is, Mitch. It's massive, and clearly our thoughts are with Dustin Martin, who's probably been the most durable player in the AFL for the last 10 years. I think it's 260 out of 268 since he made his debut.
Yeah.
Amazing courage to come back onto the ground and provide that emotional support for his teammates late. So I thought that was just a sign of his character. But it leaves them so thin. I mean, the midfield is already thin. Trent Cotchin's badly out of form. We know that. Presti's injured. They've had other injuries through there. And now you miss, the best player of the last 10, 15 years. It's going to make it really difficult. But that was the response we've been waiting for, wasn't it, for Richmond for the last 2 or 3 weeks? We finally got it. What a really strong performance it was. Well done to them.
And they rode on the back of their 300-gamer, Jack Rewalt, the 3rd player in history to kick 6 goals in his 300th game. He hasn't missed a beat late in recent games.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't look like slowing down. I mean, he has the odd really quiet game where he doesn't influence games, but, clearly he steeled himself to get himself up for a really important game. Now, the chaos that happened late in the week where the game was going to be at home and then it was moved, so that would have been really difficult for him and his family. But not many players stand up and perform and genuine best on ground in a milestone like this. So I thought the tributes for him during the week were magnificent. I thought the club, it's a sign of a really good club, the way that they celebrate their star players. He's straight to the Hall of Fame. His record is absolutely enormous.
Absolutely, and who knows how much he's got left, has signed on for next year. Jack Riewoldt. A number of dangerous tackles were called during this game. Kane, keen to get your take on exactly how many of them were there. They were pretty hot on them, but two players were fined. No, Toby Nankervis got $3,000 for this, and we'll see one later. Shea Bolton got $2,000.
Yeah, so that's fine, absolutely, and they should be fined for that. But then there's the other ones like that one. So there was 5 paid in total, and this one here is confusion. One umpire pays holding the ball, one pays dangerous tackle. That one, there's not a dangerous tackle. It's not. There's no head there, McCluggage. It's landing on your arm and your shoulder. There's no slinging motion. So it's one of the areas that the fans are most confused about right now. And I get it. I get what the AFL are trying to do. And I understand our game right now has never been more difficult for the umpires to umpire. That's not a dangerous tackle. That's a push in the back free kick. It's not a dangerous tackle free kick. So a lot of confusion. The AFL have clearly clamped down on it. And I get the confusion and understand it's really difficult for the umpires at the moment.
Brisbane, their second loss in consecutive weeks. Kane, they've moved to 5th now on the table. Geelong's win over Fremantle looks like they might move into 3rd for the rest of the season. How do you see this playing out? Because this is how the run home sits for Port Adelaide in 4th and Brisbane in 5th.
Yeah, and look at the run home. So Port Adelaide, Collingwood, GWS, Adelaide, Carlton, the Western Bulldogs. Both teams have a really favourable run home as you look at it now. Who knows? We see results like tonight, but Brisbane, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Freo, Collingwood and West Coast. Port Adelaide have that game in hand, which is a massive advantage, but Brisbane have 5% more. So look, it could be an amazing situation where Port Adelaide finish 4th, which is probably the way it's shaping up with their run home, yet we're so unconvinced by what they've done throughout the home and away season. But all you got to do over 23 weeks is get inside that top 4, get your home final, and who knows what can happen in finals. So both teams still in a reasonable position, but right now you'd be really questioning how far Brisbane can go.
Getting to our AAMI clangers next. This is back to Thursday night, Geelong and Fremantle. Reece Stanley in the ruck. Didn't want a bar of helping his counterpart, Sean Darcy.
Well, Darcy wasn't allowed to go up because he didn't nominate, but he still got in the way and ended up getting a hit out off his shoulder. Mitch Robinson, can we call him hungry here? Like, how far is that ball?
It's 90 metres.
Mitch, he can't kick at 70.
This is early in the game. This is the start of the game. Brad Crouch and Zach Jones aren't reading the magnet board that Brett Ratton's held up. Isaac Smith, he's been super this year for Geelong at his new club. That didn't work. Now, this is Lockie Bramble earlier tonight. He's been awesome moving back to half-back in recent weeks, wearing the same number as Isaac Smith. Is that fate?
Oh, that hurts. He did all the hard work. He burned off 3 opponents. He got for the extra bounce. Middle of winter, wet, damp ground. Often the bounce just doesn't sit up for you, unfortunately.
No, he's been good with no Jaff and Noble Day Impey in that side as well. Lockie Bramble. Earlier today, Gold Coast and the Western Bulldogs. The Suns, Kane, they hung around in this one. They gave the Dogs a few nervous moments, but really it was that defensive transition from the Dogs that won out when it mattered most.
Yeah, so the Suns' last 3 weeks have been really good, beating Richmond and GWS and then taking it right up to a really powerful side in the Western Bulldogs. This is where they did their damage, their backline transition, their speed of ball movement, their skill. This is what I think is the one point of difference from any team in the competition is the Western Bulldogs. So their depth, their class and their speed through the midfield and backline is just what's giving them a slight edge for me over Geelong and Melbourne in the race to the premiership as it sits after round 18.
Their 3rd most points this year generated from the back half today for the Dogs against Gold Coast. Jamari Ugle-Hagan, Kane, he hit the scoreboard, missed last week. There are eerie similarities between he and Buddy Franklin. Both goals in their first game, both 3 goals in their second up performance.
8 disposals, 5 marks and 3 goals, including that one there, which was his first, and didn't his teammates love it? So he looked out of his depth last week, absolutely didn't look ready. So what a difference a week makes. And well done to Luke Beveridge. He's coached really well this year, Luke Beveridge, and he knew, a bit of a risk to play him for the second game with Norton coming back in, but it paid dividends. Now he's got a bit of a headache in terms of what to do, which we'll get to, but you can tell something special. That's all you're looking for with young players. One or two things that you think, gee whiz, I'm looking forward to seeing this kid play for a long period of time. He did more than that. So he exceeded my expectations tonight. And the Western Bulldogs, you'd love to be a Western Bulldogs supporter right now with Darcy coming in, with all the young talent they've got, and Ugle-Hagan with Norton in the forward line for the next 10 years. Look out.
So right now, he played in the forward line today with Norton and Josh Bruce. Tim English went alone in the ruck. Steph Martin's 1 or 2 weeks away from his shoulder injury. When Martin comes back in, probably pushes English forward. Does Jamara miss out?
Probably. That's the way I think it will go. Now, there's going to be ups and downs with young players, isn't there? You're going to have form fluctuations. We see that across the competition. I mean, Ben King tonight was super quiet and as impressive he's been. Max was the same today for St Kilda. So you do have that fluctuation. I think that will happen with Jamara when he gets a better opponent and a stronger opposition. So he's probably the unlucky one that misses out. But the next 10 years are going to be something special.
Back to Thursday night, an absolute procession in the West for the Cats. How about some of these numbers to kick this one off? The marks inside 50, that's the 4th biggest differential since 2000. More than 26 marks for the Cats over the Dockers inside 50.
I couldn't believe this performance from Fremantle. I've been really optimistic about the way that they're building, and on the big stage, they don't get to play on that stage, the national one, very often at home in front of a crowd, and they serve this up. So defensively, just not there at all. And to have that, conceding this many marks as we're seeing, I mean, some of their ball use was just brilliant. But this sort of stuff, I mean, this just shouldn't happen to professional AFL footballers. Joel Selwood's not a long kick. He looks for his mate. It just shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. Too easy. Griffin Logue pushed out of it. Once again, marks on the goal line in wet conditions. I mean, what is going on there? So a lot to work on for Fremantle. You'd think their finals chances are shot. And that was a really poor performance, their worst of the year, I thought.
And that was no Cats forward along with Jeremy Cameron and Gary Rowan missing. As you mentioned, the Dockers, their first primetime game in 5 years, Kane. They really butchered it in front of their home fans. And one thing Justin Longmuir said when he took this job, he wanted to improve their foot skills. Well, they're not responding to their coach right now.
60 turnovers from 299 disposals, which is a low number, is horrible. So 1 in every 5. They conceded 70 points from turnover, which is the second most of their season. I understand the conditions were wet prior to the game, but no excuse for that. I mean, that's just flat-footed rubbish, really, from Fremantle, and no wonder Geelong had their way. That's how you score most in football, is turning the ball over in your front half, and they made a meal of it. So the top 7 disposal winners on the ground were Geelong players, and it was one of the most comprehensive beatings. I mean, that's sort of comical sort of stuff, isn't it? So you can understand why Justin Longmuir had his head in his hands for most of that night. If
there was a silver lining for the Dockers, it is Sean Darcy has escaped serious damage on that knee. May only miss 1 week, if at all. To the ladder, as it sits midway through round 18. Melbourne, they've moved to top just before the rest of the season. That draw is going to come in handy, potentially. The Cats move into 3rd and a bit of race on for 7th and 8th.
Yeah, the race is clearly on, which is really exciting. The season's had that many twists and turns in it. You think Fremantle are out, you think St Kilda are out. Giants and Essendon still in play here. Carlton, no. So fascinating ladder as we gear up for 5 games for some teams, 6 games left, and a lot to play out yet, you get the feeling.
4 games left in this round. 8 teams overall, Kane, this round have been impacted by COVID-19. You can read more about that on afl.com.au with different players and officials. The first game, North Melbourne Essendon, is the first of a double header at Metricon.
Well, North have been playing some reasonable footy, haven't they? Absolutely. So they'll take it up, and then you see the Crows there taking on West Coast. Who knows about the Eagles? Their last 2 weeks have been diabolical, and Adelaide wasn't much better last week as well. So will they respond? And then the Battle of the Bridge being played in Queensland. It's a really important game for both teams, really.
Yeah, the onus on Giants in that one to move back into the top 8. To our one more thing, Kane, incredible scenes in the West to kick this off. 14-minute mark of the first quarter. Dockers fans paying tribute to Millie Lucas, who lost her life to brain cancer earlier this year. This is the starlight game for the Dockers. The applaud for the 14-year-old who lost her life. And then the Pink Lady match at the MCG today. Footy throwing its weight behind some terrific causes.
I think the AFL does it better than any sporting code in the country. You probably put them in the world. The way that the fans get behind causes as significant as these and others throughout every season is amazing. So crowds, no crowds, doesn't matter. Well done to everyone who donated or spared a thought for those amazing causes this round.
All right, Kane, enjoy the rest of round 18. Hopefully see you here in the studio next week for the round so far.
Good on you, mate.